Number 10. Black Panther and the Anaconda. The biggest snakes in the world right now that we know of are anacondas, specifically the green anaconda from South America. It is the largest serpent on our planet, with a length on average of about 23 feet and weighing up to 280 pounds. These snakes live in the rivers and waterways of the Amazon jungle. They swim incredibly fast, and because of their massive appearance and special snake qualities, they can eat just about anything they want. They are the apex predators of the Amazon. There is only one other animal that can really think about challenging even the smallest anaconda. Of course, this is the Black Panther. If you don't believe that a cat could take on an anaconda, you haven't seen the video uploaded just a few years ago that shows the fierce fight between a melanistic jaguar, which is really what a Black Panther is, and an anaconda. Throughout the video, there's quite a bit of a struggle, but the big cat was far too powerful. It actually managed to get the snake out of the water and onto the land, where it probably ate it for dinner. The snake was trying to wriggle away from the vicious cat, but it just wasn't quick enough. The anaconda may be the biggest snake on the planet, but it's apparently no match for a Black Panther. Number 9. The olive python. Next up on our list is the incredibly huge olive python, which you can find all throughout the outback in Australia. It's one of the biggest and meanest snakes in the world. So mean, in fact, that one was recently spotted swallowing an Australian freshwater crocodile in the swamps of Mount Isa in Queensland. This was extraordinary. Snake experts know pythons are capable of swallowing creatures larger than them, but these types of pythons typically only eat things like rats, birds, bats, and other small mammals, while their most ambitious meals consist of kangaroos and possums and even porcupines, though spiky porcupines are often a pretty bad decision for any snake. You know, with the spikes and all. The last thing anyone expects for the olive python to actually gobble up is an entire crocodile. GG Wildlife Reserve Inc. recently uploaded the photos on Facebook after discovering what the snake was doing. To be straight, the crocodile really had no chance. This particular olive python was a giant, much larger than your average Australian snake. It was easily over 13 feet in length, with the freshwater crocodile only being about 5 feet from snout to tail. That means there was extra room in the snake's belly for a second crocodile if it felt like trying its luck again. Crocs may be some of the largest and meanest types of reptiles in Australia, but it's no match for a hungry and sly serpent like this. Hey, real quick, if this is the first time you're checking out the channel, thanks for watching. Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Danger in the Everglades. The Florida Everglades is a pretty terrifying place. Not only is it filled with mosquitoes, giant reptiles with rows of sharp teeth, and plenty of other scary animals, it's also home to some of the biggest Burmese pythons on the planet. These snakes are huge and have been introduced into the Everglades over the years due to neglectful pet owners. The Burmese python originally came from Asia, but because Florida is so similar to its natural habitat, the snake has thrived in the United States. People get these snakes as pets, realise that they are way too big to handle, and abandon them outdoors. Now there are thousands of them breeding in Florida. How big does this snake get? Well, according to Florida Fish and Wildlife, the Burmese python can reach a length of up to 26 feet in its natural habitat, and it can weigh over 200 pounds. However, the average Burmese python in Florida is only between 8 and 10 feet, but that length was demolished recently when a python hunter came across the biggest snake either of them had ever seen before. They were hunting in the Everglades when the huge monster of a snake slithered in front of their path. They quickly scrambled to catch it and were shocked when they found out the python was an incredible 18 feet and 9 inches long and weighing 104 pounds, meaning they had captured the largest Burmese python in Florida history. Number 7. Giant tree snake. Believe it or not, some of the biggest snakes in the world aren't even dangerous. Take the recent story of an Australian reptile catcher who arrived at an industrial site in the small town of Coolum, thinking he was called in to catch a dangerous eastern brown snake. Instead, Stuart Mackenzie found one of the biggest common tree snakes on the planet. And this guy was no stranger to snakes. He owned a local snake removal service, so he had already seen pretty much everything there is to see. Or at least he thought so. The tree snake that he captured from the industrial site ended up being nearly 5 feet long. It had actually disrupted work because the builders thought they were dealing with an extremely venomous snake that could strike and kill at any moment. The eastern brown snake is big, bad, definitely dangerous, and one of the most toxic land snakes on the planet. But the fact that the tree snake was big enough that the workers confused it with the brown snake is wild. Of course, Stuart knew what he was dealing with as soon as he located the creature. The giant tree snake was relocated into the bushes without being harmed, and later on the workers were able to get back to their jobs. According to the man himself, it was the largest tree snake he had ever seen. Number 6. Nightmares in Alabama. Let's move back across the world to the United States, where in 2020, the longest snake in North America was found to be breeding in Alabama for the first time in 46 years. This is the eastern indigo snake. The young snake was likely the result of several different government agencies and universities that have been trying for the past few years to reintroduce the indigo snake into the Conecuh National Forest as part of a conservation effort. Apparently, it's working. But should the government really be introducing these giant nightmare-looking snakes into Alabama? The answer is a definite yes. The eastern indigo snake may be huge and scary, able to reach a length of over 9 feet, but it's not that dangerous. It's a non-venomous snake, meaning it poses absolutely no threats to humans. It's actually a critical part of the local ecosystem, and it's been missing since the 1950s. The eastern indigo snake can still be found in abundance in Florida and South Georgia, but it was on the brink of extinction in Alabama. Hopefully, with these new efforts, the biodiversity of the state can be brought back to life. Number 5. Giant snake invades Walmart. The last place anyone expects to find a giant snake is in Walmart. This incident happened on August the 7th, when a Walmart in Odessa was besieged by a slithering customer who had no intention of buying anything. The giant snake simply wanted to terrorize and possibly eat some of the other customers. It was discovered by store employees while doing a routine walkthrough of the store. They quickly called animal control, who came and took the snake away without harming it, though they never did say what type of snake it was. All we really know is that it was huge. But this wasn't the first time an incident like this happened. According to a report from Newsweek, in 2019, another Texas Walmart was also besieged by a snake. A giant rat snake was found slithering through the parking lot, actively preventing a woman from entering her vehicle. A police officer arrived on the scene and took care of the serpent, allowing the woman to finally get into her truck. It's not really clear what exactly is luring all these snakes to their neighborhood Walmarts, but hopefully somebody gets to the bottom of it soon. Number 4. African rock python. The African rock python is yet another giant type of python. It is the biggest snake in all of Africa, and just a little smaller than its cousin, the Burmese python we talked about earlier. It can be found slithering through South Africa, growing anywhere from 9 to 10 feet in length, though the largest specimens ever recorded have been upwards of 15 feet. Even though it's a bit smaller than the other pythons, this snake is a force to be reckoned with. A large African rock python was recently found eating an entire goat on someone's farm in the Tugela Valley of South Africa. A snake removal company had to be called in to get the giant python off the client's property, but it wasn't an easy job. The handler managed to track down the snake easily enough, but the hard part came from walking over 3 miles back to his vehicle while carrying the 55-pound serpent on his back. To make things even worse, it apparently peed on him during the walk. Not only is the African rock python huge and deadly, but apparently it's a little rude. As for this particularly rude python, it was transported to a local game reserve and then released. The guy that the snake peed on had to drive home without his shirt on. Number 3. 50-foot anaconda. We've all heard the tales of supernaturally large snakes hiding out in the wild. We've already established that the anaconda is the biggest snake in the world, but there are always reports coming in of snakes growing upwards of 50 feet and being captured in a blurry viral video. Of course, these are almost always nonsense. Take for example, a recent video that went viral on Twitter that apparently shows an anaconda with a length of over 50 feet crossing a Brazilian river. The video first surfaced online in 2018, and it definitely seems like there is a huge snake crossing the length of the river, but of course, the claims are false. The video has actually been stretched and manipulated, making the serpent appear far larger than it really is. It also makes the river look ridiculously wide, when in fact it's quite slim. The anaconda was probably only 10 to 12 feet long. Number 2. King of the monsters. 60 million years ago, just after the extinction of the dinosaurs, a monster of a snake slithered around the planet, the Titanoboa. This nightmare of a snake dominated the tropics of South America. According to the fossil evidence discovered in 2009 in Colombia by a team of international scientists, the Titanoboa grew to be about 42 feet long and weighed somewhere around 2,500 pounds. According to paleontologist Jonathan Block, the Titanoboa was even larger than many of the fantasy snakes conceived of by Hollywood, like the snake in the movie Anaconda that tried to eat Jennifer Lopez. Even that fictitious snake was nowhere near as large as the actual Titanoboa. Even though it was so incredibly huge, it apparently only ate a couple times a year. The gargantuan snake would feast on a huge turtle or a prehistoric crocodile, and then just kind of hang out in the river for a few months before it would strike again. Number 1. Snakes in the ceiling. It seems no matter where you go in Australia, you can't escape giant snakes. A man in Australia was recently given the shock of a lifetime when a pair of massive serpents crashed through his kitchen ceiling and nearly gave him a heart attack. He found two giant carpet snakes, also known as carpet pythons, when they fell from the ceiling and onto the kitchen floor in his home in Brisbane. Then they slithered off into other rooms. The two large snakes had apparently been fighting over a third female snake inside his ceiling. What's truly disturbing is that each of the snakes was around 9 or 10 feet long and weighed upwards of 40 pounds. They were some of the biggest and fattest carpet snakes that the native Australian had ever seen. Luckily, a snake catcher arrived to take care of the situation. He wrangled the two large males and relocated them to a state forest where they couldn't do any more harm, but there was a concern because the third snake, the female that the males had been fighting over, was nowhere to be found. The only good news is that carpet pythons aren't generally dangerous, as they have no venom. Still, you definitely don't want to take your chances with any large snake that you find in Australia. According to professional snake catcher Raymond Hoser, if you get bitten by a venomous snake in Australia, you will almost certainly die without treatment. In the case that you are bitten, you should put a bandage on your arm and drive straight to the hospital. Number 10. Snorkeling mother attacked. How can you stop an angry shark when it's on a steadfast rampage? Yeah, I have no idea either. Take for example the horrific story from 1985 when a mother was literally ripped apart by a giant great white shark that swam up out of nowhere. This was an extremely tragic incident for the family, seeing as Shirley Durden was only 33 years old when she was consumed by a 20-foot monster shark in front of her terrified and screaming loved ones. This gruesome incident is still one of the most infamous shark attacks in the history of Australia, simply for how unrelenting and unmerciful the shark was in its assault. And if you don't like gore, you should definitely skip ahead to the next story, because what the shark did to this woman was atrocious. She literally had her head torn from her body while diving for scallops off the coast of southern Australia. Her family sat and watched from the shore as the giant shark bit her head completely off her body. Just imagine the horror felt by her husband and children in those moments, having to watch something so brutal. Apparently, Shirley had been the first person in a decade to be killed by a great white shark in the south of Australia. But of course, Shirley will surely not be the last. Number 9. 12 deaths in 4 days. Not all shark attacks happen down under in Australia. One of the most brutal incidences of an enraged shark going on a vicious destruction spree happened in 1916 along the New Jersey coastline. This was what inspired a mass fear and paranoia of sharks in the United States today. Over the course of just 4 days, a single shark went out of its way to sneak up on unsuspecting swimmers and attack them. What makes this such an interesting story is that before 1916, most scientists didn't think sharks were a threat to humans. They just thought they were big, stupid fish. Rolling my eyes. The first doomed swimmer to be killed by the shark in 1916 was a man named Charles Van Sant. He had arrived at Beach Haven on July the 1st with the thought that he would have a fun-filled day of innocent swimming and relaxing in the hot sun. Unfortunately, a demented shark came out of literally nowhere and ripped him apart. After his death, 3 more followed, some of them as much as 45 miles away from each other. The final attack came on July the 12th when a single shark murdered 2 children off a small town of Matawan, 11 miles from the beach, which is really weird as sharks don't usually venture that far inland. In this case, the assailant was eventually caught by fishermen, and it turned out to be a pretty small great white considering it was a mass murderer. It was only 7.5 feet long and 350 pounds. Still, it became a legend that would eventually spawn the book Jaws, and later the movie. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome! Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Unexpected death. It's true that you never really see a shark coming. And if you do, chances are it's already too late. While diving off the coast of Mendocino, a man named Cliff Zimmerman could only watch in horror as his old friend and diving partner was ravaged by a shark. A shark that literally came out of nowhere. It swam up as fast as an underwater bullet and ripped his friend into pieces. According to Zimmerman himself, he heard a whoosh noise like a submarine, saw the shark brush past him, and before he knew what was happening, the water was filled with blood. Zimmerman claims that the incident was over in mere seconds and nobody saw the shark again. The shark came in for the kill, it made the kill, and it vanished back into the great below. A real dine and dash fiasco. This is truly an apex predator in its prime, hunting whatever it feels like in its own domain. The poor human never stood a chance. Number 7. Swan River shark attack. The last place you expect an angry shark to turn up is a river. Shark attacks are something that generally happen out at sea. But of course, Australia is a crazy place. Just recently, a man got into quite a bit of trouble in Swan River when an angry bull shark came out of nowhere and decided to give him a taste. This shocked the entire community because it had been 50 years since the last shark attack in any river system near the city of Perth. Apparently, bull sharks are actually in many of the waterways of Australia, but they aren't that aggressive. The man who was just bitten and suffered critical injuries from the shark's teeth must have done something to really aggravate the creature. Either that, or it was simply in a bad mood and decided to take it out on the silly human. According to the news report from ABC, there are dozens of sharks in almost every major river in Australia, but most of them hang out in the upper areas of the rivers eating crabs and other sea creatures. It's very rare for a bull shark to become aggressive and attack a person. In this guy's case, he luckily survived the incident and was released from the hospital. Number 6. Mauled by an angry shark. Not everyone gets to go surfing and do a meet and greet with a great white shark. It is a rare experience that either ends with an overwhelming respect of the animal or a short trip to the morgue. A surfer who was recently attacked in the waters near Kangaroo Island narrowly escaped his own trip to the morgue and has definitely been humbled by the experience. It all happened during a seemingly normal day of surfing. According to him, the attack felt like getting hit by a literal truck. The shark came out of nowhere. The guy was sitting on his surfboard, felt something on his leg, and suddenly he was in the powerful jaws of the beast. The shark bit him on his back, on his elbow, and on his buttocks. He got only the briefest glimpse of the heinous predator before it let him go and disappeared back into the depths of the ocean below. The shark apparently didn't want to eat him, it just wanted to sample his meat and show him who was boss. The surfer sustained serious injuries all over his body, yet somehow managed to swim 984 feet back to the shore. Even after such a horrifying experience, the surfer was feeling lucky and grateful, which is definitely the best way to look at this kind of incident. Number 5. Death from below. When it comes to the fury of an angry shark, a young girl named Kayla Marlowe learned the hard way of just how devastating these impressive animals can be. The girl had been visiting the popular Waihi Beach in New Zealand when she was attacked and killed by a shark with a really bad attitude. According to the local New Zealand police, the area where the attack occurred was blocked off for at least 7 long days while an investigation was launched. As for the poor girl, nobody saw exactly what happened, but she was taken from the water with serious leg wounds, and despite attempts at resuscitation, she was pronounced dead at the scene. The family is obviously devastated, and so is the community. This was the first fatal shark attack in 8 years in the country of New Zealand, and nobody knows why it happened. The shark clearly came out of nowhere, and it was apparently pretty angry. The saddest part is that nobody will ever know the reason for this girl's untimely death. Number 4. The USS Indianapolis. Believe it or not, the worst shark attack in history happened on July 29, 1945, after a United States naval ship was taken down by a Japanese sub. But the ship sinking was only the first part of the nightmare. After the USS Indianapolis was sunk, 900 out of the 1,196 men aboard made it into the water still alive and just floating there waiting to be rescued. But as the sun came up on July 30th, all hell broke loose. It appeared that curious sharks had been drawn by the noise from the explosion. Plus, the water was already full of blood. Now there were 900 men unprotected in the middle of the ocean waiting to be saved, and the hungry sharks used this to their advantage. First, the sharks began feeding on people who were already dead. But more and more sharks kept coming, and the food began to run out. As the days went by, many of the survivors died from heat, thirst, and many people even suffered from hallucinations and drank seawater, only to die from salt poisoning. Their corpses were eaten by the sharks, but some survivors were also consumed. According to a historical report from Smithsonian Magazine, it has been estimated that at least 150 people died from being picked off by the ravenous sharks. When rescue finally showed up days later, only 317 lucky survivors remained. Number 3. The Flying Great White Shark. If you thought sharks were scary in the water, just wait until you hear this next story. A great white shark was recently caught on video jumping out of the water, flying through the air, and ripping apart a helpless seal. The clip was filmed for a National Geographic show being put on Disney+, but nobody could have expected this to happen. The merciless shark shot out of the depths with its toothy jaw open, then arced through the air while crunching down on the poor little seal. Who would have thought the great white sharks were powerful enough that they could hop out of the ocean and soar through the air before crashing back into the water? Apparently, nowhere is really safe from one of these unexpected attacks, especially if you're a seal. Number 2. Shark versus kangaroo. But seals aren't the only animals that need to watch out for sharks. A kangaroo recently became the target for an angry shark after it decided to take a little swim in southern Australia. An eyewitness saw the entire thing while walking his dogs on the beach. The kangaroo must have been sick or in danger, as that's the only reason they ever go out into the sea. But in this case, it was a hugely devastating mistake for the marsupial. The eyewitness told Australia's ABC News that the kangaroo headed out into the water, and before it knew what was happening, a furious shark came out of nowhere and tore it apart. The eyewitness waited around for a little while longer to see what would happen, but the shark apparently swam off back into the ocean. Later on, the man's story was confirmed by an official who discovered the carcass of the very kangaroo mangled on the beach. The moral of the story here is that great white sharks are not in the least bit picky about who they take their anger out on. Number 1. Hammerhead Sharks. We've talked a lot today about great white sharks, but the truth is that hammerhead sharks can be equally as terrifying. They're certainly not as dangerous, but they are definitely still great at freaking people out. This is especially true when they're angry and come out of nowhere. In a recent video shared by Fox News, you could see a deadly hammerhead shark swimming dangerously close to a completely oblivious swimmer. The video was taken from a drone off the coast of Miami Beach, and it is one of the most heart-stopping encounters that a person can have, especially when they don't know it's happening. Of course, nobody knows if this hammerhead shark was angry or not. It didn't end up eating the guy, even though he had his legs dangling in front like juicy meat treats. Plus, hammerhead sharks don't usually attack humans. In this case, the guy got away luckily. Number 10. Whale versus boat. Some of the craziest animal incidents involve whales attacking boats. This is a horrifying thing that can happen almost anywhere in the seven seas. One of the most recent run-ins with a dangerous whale happened off the Cape of Good Hope, South Africa, when a juvenile whale sprang out of the water and smashed into a yacht. During the attack, the whale managed to break the mast and scare everyone on board, though luckily nobody died. Instead, the whale simply left a bit of blubber and skin on the deck from where it hit. It's been a mystery to scientists why whales sometimes attack boats, especially when they know a vessel is right there. Now though, scientists believe that this type of acrobatic display could be a signal of irritation or aggression. On the other hand, scientists are also saying that whales who do this could just be young and curious, like normal human teenagers. In South Africa, the legal limit you're actually allowed to approach a whale is within 900 feet. So, this particular incident could have been caused by the boat harassing the whale. Then again, maybe the whale was just out to get a bit of attention. Number 9. Cod eats human. A lot of the craziest animal incidents involve an animal eating something it probably shouldn't have. For example, take a look at the giant cod that somehow managed to get a human head inside its stomach. This giant cod was found by workers in an Australian fish factory when they sliced the fish open to find an adult male's head rolling around in the stomach of the fish. The fish in question was about 5.5 feet in length and weighed 97 pounds, though surely 4 or 5 of those pounds could be attributed to the human head. This was one of those weird incidents where nobody was really sure how it even happened. While it might seem like the cod ate someone, that probably isn't the case. It was more likely that the cod was just an opportunistic feeder and happened to see this guy's head floating through the water. As for the victim, the New York Post said that it may have been a trawler who had been missing since the previous week after falling overboard in the Pacific Ocean. As for the murderer, a sea life expert from the Stirling University in Scotland claimed that it could have been a crocodile. The crocodile likely chomped the guy up after his body floated close to shore. Then, the cod swam by later and gobbled the man's head into its belly, where it was found by the factory workers about a week later. According to one of the factory workers, there is amazing stuff found in fish all the time, but nobody at the factory has ever seen anything quite as horrific or strange as a human head. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome! Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Golden Retriever and the Fork. Speaking of animals eating things they shouldn't, check out this next weird incident of the Golden Retriever puppy that needed to undergo an emergency medical procedure after somehow swallowing a fork. Dogs are known for eating some weird stuff, but this really pushes the envelope. The puppy was only 5 months old when he was rushed to the Adelaide Animal Emergency and Referral Centre to receive an emergency endoscopy to find and then get rid of the large utensils stuck inside of him. According to the report from ABC News, the owners of the dog claimed that they walked away from the dinner table only for a second before the puppy jumped on the table and started scarfing things down. Somehow, during its frantic eating frenzy, a fork got mixed in with the real food. It wasn't until a few minutes later that they realised one of the forks was gone and they couldn't find it. Veterinarians at the animal hospital were professionals. They quickly took an X-ray, located the fork, and then safely removed it from the dog's stomach by slowly pulling it out of his throat. The surgery was minimally invasive and low risk. It was a huge success, and the dog was allowed to go home, where he healed and made a full recovery. Number 7. Bat bombers. Another one of the weirdest animal incidents happened during World War II, when a man named Dr. Adams got a wild idea that North American guano bats could be used in the war effort by devastating the enemy soldiers with firebomb attacks. In January of 1942, Dr. Adams actually sent a proposal to the White House about using bats as bombers. And surprisingly, it actually got the green light. The idea of using real bats as soldiers was passed on to the Army Chemical Warfare Service and the Army Air Forces. But of course, this batty idea didn't make it very far. Dr. Adams and a small team of other professionals gathered up a bunch of bats. Incendiary bombs were designed to be attached to their little chests, and on May 21st, 1943, 5 groups of bats fitted with dummy bombs were dropped from 5,000 feet out of a B-25. It was a disaster. Almost none of the bats were able to fly because they hadn't recovered from their hibernation, and they died upon impact. There were a few more tests done, including some experiments where they put bats in ice cube trays and forced them to hibernate. But no matter what they tried, it just didn't seem to work. The army finally called off the testing in May 29, 1943. Number 6. Seagulls are shy. Seagulls like to stare, especially if you have food, but it turns out that seagulls don't like you staring at them. Scientists have now discovered the secret to keeping your chips safe from scavenging gulls while at the beach or on the boardwalk. All you have to do is stare directly into their eyes. After researchers at the University of Exeter completed their study on gulls and their food thievery, it turned out that the birds were far more likely to rob the food when nobody was looking. They tested this by placing a bag of chips on the ground and then timing how long it took for the herring gulls to approach. The results are going to shock you. On average, it took the gulls 21 seconds longer to steal the bag of chips when one of the researchers was staring directly at them. Of course, not all the gulls were willing to participate in the study. Only 27 out of 74 gulls participated. Out of the 27 guilty gulls that tried to snatch up the chips, only 19 of them completed both tests of looking at them and not looking at them. By completing this study, it seems that most seagulls don't actually want to rob your food, but there are a handful out there who are a bit bolder than their feathered friends. But regardless, it seems that all seagulls are a little bit shy. Number 5. Penguin poop bombs. Here is one of the most ridiculous studies that has probably ever been done. In case you didn't know, penguins are actually able to make bombs out of their poop. This is disgusting, but it's also nature. Penguins are able to shoot their poop bombs at a distance of over 4 feet, and it's absolutely awful to see, and even more awful if you're their target. These tiny aquatic birds basically have a jet propulsion system built into their butts and are able to defecate at twice their own body length. Rather than just leaving this gross fact alone, scientists actually decided to study how and why the birds are able to do this. I won't get into the very gross specifics, but after a handful of studies from between 2005 and 2019, a few key things have been determined. The first important thing is to understand why. It's all about staying tidy. Penguins blast their poop away from them as a way to keep their nests clean. In this way, it's actually less disgusting than you might think. However, the penguin poop bombs actually cause an occupational hazard for those who have to care for them in zoos and aquariums. If the caregivers aren't careful, they often end up with penguin poop bombs straight in the face. Number 4. Python and python. You've probably seen pictures of bloated pythons, and it's common knowledge snakes swallow their prey whole. A manager at the Parry Creek Farm Tourist Resort in Western Australia recently captured photos of a giant python vomiting up another python. This kind of thing is almost never witnessed, and it's crazy that somebody managed to get a photo evidence of it happening. The manager found a python about 13 feet long and decided to take it away from his house. But during the transport, the python began to spit something up. As the man stood and watched, it became clear that the python was puking up another snake. According to Live Science and National Geographic, this isn't as rare as we might think, it's just not seen very often. Snakes, and indeed pythons, will eat absolutely anything they can get their mouths on. When a python wants to eat another python larger than itself, it will force the larger snake's spinal column to bend in a very particular pattern as it eats it, thereby stuffing the larger snake snugly into its belly. In this case, it looked like the smaller snake bit off a bit more than it could swallow, and it barfed its uncomfortable meal right out. Number 3. Rampaging mice. Sure, mice attacks are extremely rare, but that doesn't mean they don't happen. For example, take the bizarre and horrific story of the rampaging mice that have been on a killing spree since the early 2000s. Their victims are albatrosses, massive seabirds that apparently don't have the know-how or the motivation to defend themselves against the mad mice. It apparently happens in clusters all over the Hawaiian archipelago. A seabird researcher named Christopher Jones was working on the Marion Island and Gough Island back in 2017 and 2018 when he stumbled upon 3 adult seabirds that had been brutally injured and 23 that were dead, all from the attacking mice. What's really strange about this is the islands are separated by about 2,500 miles of ocean. This means that all the islands in the area are probably populated by mice which have no natural predators because they were brought there by boat and are an invasive species. As it turns out, the entire population of seabirds that live on these islands are in danger. The mice are starving and they have no problem attacking and killing something 300 times their size. The birds don't know what to do about it. If nothing is done, the Hawaiian archipelago will be full of rats and all the birds will be gone. Number 2. Dog versus crocodile. At the remote Goat Island Lodge deep in the Australian outback, there once lived a dog named Pippa. Pippa was a terrier who got locally famous for her exploits with a saltwater crocodile named Casey. This tiny dog would bark, bully, and often chase the saltwater croc away from the banks of the river near where they both lived. Even the tourists who came through that area were shocked to see the little dog literally terrorizing the crocodile. But it was an adorable story and people applauded Pippa's incredible bravery. But of course, the crocodile eventually had enough. One day, Casey the crocodile struck back, grabbing Pippa with her powerful jaws and dragging the dog into the river in front of terrified visitors. According to the owner of the dog, Pippa had made the silly mistake of approaching the face of the crocodile instead of her tail. And considering Casey was an 11-foot beast of teeth and raw power, it was no surprise that the brave little dog eventually met his end. And while Pippa's owner told the local news stations he was upset by the whole incident, he also said it was bound to happen sooner or later. He couldn't stop Pippa from terrorizing the croc, she simply loved it too much. Number 1. Zombie dogs. I have saved the most chilling animal incident for last, so be prepared for some freaky stuff. A film was released in 1941 showing Soviet scientists reanimating a dismembered dog head inside of a machine. According to the report from the Daily Mail, the machine somehow circulated blood throughout the brain and restored all the basic motor functions of the dog's head. But even though the film was released to the public in 1941, the experiment actually took place in 1928 in an area when all scientists wanted to be like Dr. Frankenstein. The device for keeping the dog's head alive was known as the autojector. It apparently allowed the dog's head to react to light and sound, even though it had no body. This same system of artificial circulation is what we use today in thousands of different operations to keep people living even when their heart isn't pumping and their lungs aren't breathing. It's a crucial piece of scientific technology, and it all started in the 1920s by experimenting on dogs, as horribly unfortunate as that is. As for the zombified head, there is some speculation over whether the video is real or it was just part of a propaganda campaign to make the Soviets appear more frightening. In any case, you now know that the first zombie was a dog. Number 10. Polka dot zebra. One of the most breathtaking and rare animals in the world was spotted recently in Kenya at the Masai Mara National Reserve. A zebra with spots instead of stripes. This marks the first time that a zebra with this kind of unusual pattern has ever been photographed at this nature reserve. It was a baby zebra and the youngster was completely black with little white polka dots all over its body. Apparently, the zebra has a pigment disorder, although at first glance it looks like it could be a completely different species. The zebra was named Tira, and it has become famous not only at the nature reserve but all over the world. The term for its pigment disorder is being dubbed pseudomelanism, referring to its stripe pattern abnormality. Oddly enough, if you were to shave a normal zebra, it would be completely black. However, we won't know what Tira the spotted zebra looks like as an adult for a few more years until she fully matures. Number 9. The Bornean orangutan. There's no orangutan on Earth as difficult to spot as the red-orange Bornean orangutan, and that's because the species is unfortunately critically endangered. According to the World Wildlife Foundation, its population has declined by over 50% throughout the past 60 years. The habitat of the Bornean orangutan has also been reduced by 55% in the last 20 years, and they are barely hanging on. They used to be prevalent throughout Indonesia, but today you would have a very hard time spotting one. The good news is that there are 3 subspecies found on different parts of the island of Borneo. Each type of orangutan has a short beard, light orange hair, and can grow to be around 4.6 feet tall and 220 pounds. There's the northwest Bornean orangutan, with only about 1,500 left in the wild. Then there's the northeast Bornean orangutan, which is the smallest of them all. And finally, the central Bornean orangutan is the most prevalent right now, with at least 35,000 individuals still alive. If you're wondering why Bornean orangutans are so important, other than the fact that they are gorgeous animals who deserve to be alive, they play a very important role in the ecosystem. One of the main things that orangutans do is disperse seeds to keep the forest healthy. There have been at least 500 different plant species recorded in their diet, meaning they help to disperse all 500 of these plants, helping the forest to grow. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Eel-like sea monster. A horrifying monster from the deep sea recently terrified the internet. No one had ever seen it before. It made its alien appearance in 2016 in a lake south of China. To this day, no one is entirely sure what it is or where it came from. The creature was completely white, shaped a lot like an eel, had fins, but mysteriously no eyes. It also had incredibly sharp teeth in its mouth, which kind of made it look like the offspring of an infernal demon. But however terrifying this eel-like sea monster was, it had to be a real animal, right? It turned out that someone online recognized it as a rough-head grenadier, an extremely elusive fish that lives in the North Atlantic Ocean at ridiculous depths of up to 6,500 feet. But even though someone recognized it, they may have been wrong. After all, how could it possibly have gotten from the Atlantic Ocean into a lake south of China? It simply doesn't make sense. For now, it's still just a sea monster, and hopefully it was the only one of its kind. Number 7. Northern Bald Ibis. The Northern Bald Ibis is one of the strangest animals you have ever seen. Or not seen. It has a very distinctive bright red face and narrow feathers that project from the rear of its head and neck that form a roughed up sort of look. It kind of resembles a vulture that's having a bad hair day. This bird is extremely rare, despite the fact that their family dates back over 60 million years. Fossil records have shown that it shares its genus with just one other species, and that both of them have been evolving since the time of the dinosaurs. Of course, that was until humans showed up. Over just a few decades, the population of these birds has dramatically dropped. There was a population crash in the 1950s, conservation efforts were initiated in the 70s, but today there are only between 200 and 250 of them left on the planet. They live in 2 concentrated areas in Morocco, and a few lingering populations in Syria. But even if these birds were in abundance, they would still be very rare to spot. They typically only breed in dry areas, such as cliffs and escarpments in dry and arid regions. They even keep their nests out of sight near river and sea cliffs. And when it's time to eat, ibises usually hunt in small groups on dry and rocky slopes, far away from civilization. Number 6. Rare white snake. Most people know that there's an abundance of snakes slithering around Australia. The continent is home to some of the deadliest snakes in the world, and you generally don't have to look very hard to find them. But in the Northern Territory, an extremely rare snake was discovered that has shocked wildlife experts all over the world. This incredibly unique snake apparently has a rare genetic mutation that has caused it to be completely white, but it's not an albino. According to the Territory Wildlife Park, the snake was found in the wild by a local resident who rescued it from a dog attack. He then handed it over to the park, where they recognised it immediately as a slaty grey snake, which are usually brown despite its name. These types of snakes are native to Australia, non-venomous, and actually fairly common. But it's definitely not common for one of them to turn up completely pale. So, maybe it's an albino? Nope, it's not an albino because it doesn't have the same exact features, like red or pink eyes. This particular snake had jet black eyes and was born with an incredibly rare genetic mutation. In the wild, this type of coloration is pretty unfortunate, as predators are very easily able to spot it. It has no chance of blending in. But luckily, the park adopted the snake and it will now live a long and healthy life. Number 5. Greater bamboo lemur. It's also the biggest and one of the rarest. I was leaping along. Leap, leap, leap. If you get that reference, you're awesome. The greater bamboo lemur is arguably the coolest lemur in the world, and also the most elusive. First discovered in 1870, researchers thought these lemurs went extinct until they were rediscovered in 1972. The world had no idea that an unknown population of them were hiding out in a remote region of Madagascar. But then again, that shouldn't be that surprising considering much of Madagascar is either unexplored or seriously underexplored because of harsh terrain and lack of infrastructure. And in case you didn't know, Madagascar is the only place on Earth where lemurs live. The greater bamboo lemur used to be widespread across the entire island, but today they have a very limited distribution. As of now, there are only 12 places on the island where these rare lemurs live, meaning they are almost never spotted by humans. The most recent estimations place their population at roughly 100 to 160. What's even more is that there are only about 20 individuals currently in captivity. As with many other species, this lemur is unable to adapt to its quickly changing habitat. If you're lucky enough to spot one of these rare bamboo-eating mammals, you can recognise them by their bright eyes, cute little fingers, fuzzy brown fur, and distinctive white tufted ears. Number 4. The pika. I know we all wish Pokemon were real. This next animal might be the closest we get. The pika looks exactly like a very popular Pokemon, and may even have been the inspiration for the legendary Pikachu. The American pika is tiny and cuddly, also one of the toughest animals in North America. It's one of the few mammals that is able to survive its entire life living in alpine terrain far above the tree line. This little critter is short with round ears. It doesn't have a tail that looks like a lightning bolt, but it is a dark yellow colour with a light coat of fur. And in case you were wondering, it doesn't actually make a pika pika noises like the cartoon Pikachu either. But even for such a small and rarely seen animal, the pika has a pretty fascinating story. According to the National Wildlife Federation, the American pika likely evolved from its ancestors in Siberia after they crossed the land bridge between Asia and Alaska, just like the Native American ancestors. Today, they primarily live in the Rocky Mountains, found throughout many of the northern United States and western Canada. They eat grass and weeds, and they even prepare their food by collecting wildflowers and grasses and laying them out in the sun so they don't get moldy. The pika will then store its dried out food in its den so it can eat them during the winter. Number 3. Tooth-billed pigeon. Anyone who lives near the ocean would never expect any kind of pigeon to be a rarely seen animal. These birds are often considered to be annoying flying rats, and at any harbour anywhere in the world they are in abundance. But there is one species of pigeon known as the tooth-billed pigeon that is surprisingly rare. The tooth-billed pigeon primarily eats fruits. It's only found in the forests of Samoa. It has been nicknamed the Little Dodo because of its dangerous proximity to extinction. All pigeons come from the Columbidae family, with over 310 species of pigeon and dove. The tooth-billed pigeon, however, is the only member of its genus that is still living. This is because much of its territory has been destroyed to make room for agriculture. Plus, the forests where they live have been hugely devastated by cyclones and invasive trees planted by humans. Hunting these pigeons is now completely prohibited, since annual hunts have caused their population to drop below 250. There are so few of these pigeons left that they go for years and years without being seen. One of the last sightings of a tooth-billed pigeon was in 2013 during nature surveys. This is an extremely secretive type of pigeon, and scientists believe there are still a few undiscovered pockets of them left, and they need to be aggressively protected before they are gone forever. Number 2. Plowshare Tortoise. The Plowshare Tortoise has been around for millions of years, but it is rarely ever seen. It was first discovered by humans when they settled on Madagascar over 2,000 years ago. This turtle species survived pirates, predators, and they recently endured 2 brutal cyclones that destroyed much of their ecosystem. They have even survived the global pets trade. However, according to National Geographic, they are on the countdown to extinction. The Plowshare Tortoise has gone from a stable part of the ecosystem to an animal that no one sees anymore. But what are some facts about the now rare Plowshare Tortoise? It is the largest tortoise in Madagascar. There are now less than 100 mature adults still living in the wild, and they have a brilliant golden shell that makes them truly stand out among other tortoises. Unfortunately, it's their golden shell that has gotten them into so much trouble. Their shell is highly valued by private collectors, and this has caused a huge surge in poaching in just the last few years, primarily from collectors in Southeast Asia and China who are willing to pay top dollar, even if it means the Plowshare Tortoise is going extinct. Number 1. Cuban snails. When it comes to unique animals that have been rarely seen in the wild, snails are probably not the first animal you would think about. But there are 6 special breeds of snails that are just as rare as some of the other more elusive animals on Earth, and they are known as Cuban snail or Polymita picta. These tiny gastropods look like they've been painted with psychedelic colours, and they are 100% unique to Cuba. In fact, these snails look more like decorations you'd find at a tourist gift shop than real creatures. But they are. These beautiful painted Cuban snails are found specifically in the eastern part of the country, one of the most biologically diverse places in the world. What makes them even more special is that the species has a limitless variety of colours and markings. Some scientists believe that their colour variations are defence mechanisms used to confuse predators. If all the snails look different, it's harder for predators to concentrate. It's easier to get lost staring at these marvels of nature. It's like you're gazing into a spiraling staircase that goes on forever. This extraordinary snail has an ability to secrete a mucus seal around its shell opening, which allows it to go dormant for extremely long periods of time without ever drying. This makes them super hardy and able to survive long trips out at sea while attached to vegetation, and also why they are rarely seen. Number 10. The Black Panther. There's probably no completely black animal more popular than the Black Panther, and a lot of that might have something to do with the Marvel superhero. But did you know that the Black Panther is actually a reference to any melanistic leopard or jaguar? The most common black panther is the elusive African black leopard, which is mainly found in Kenya. But don't expect to see one of these exotic cats on your next safari. Almost no other animal on Earth is shrouded in more mystery than the black leopard. Almost nobody has seen one in the wild, and very few have ever actually been documented. Leopards themselves are already considered critically endangered according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and the completely black leopard is even more rare. The actual population of the black leopard is unknown, but it's safe to say that there are only a handful of them still roaming wild Africa. The most recent sighting was in 2019 by a conservation scientist from San Diego Zoo, who managed to photograph one after setting up remote cameras in the deep Kenyan wilderness. Number 9. The Black Wolf. Imagine being a scientist walking through a dark, dense forest alone, searching for a majestic creature, an animal that symbolizes strength, but also one that must be respected and sometimes feared. You hear a twig snap and you freeze. In the distance is a powerful black wolf, illuminated by the moon. Black wolves for some people are the stuff of nightmares. You typically only see a black wolf in some kind of horrifying fairy tale or maybe in a fantasy movie. And in the movies, they're usually depicted as hungry, growling beasts, so of course people are afraid of them. And honestly, you probably should be. Black wolves are indeed real. Real, but extremely rare. Almost no wolves will have black hair in the wild. The only black wolves ever documented to be completely black were found in North America, even though different species of wolves are found all over the globe. This suggests that there is a special gene variant that cropped up somewhere in the history of the North American continent, which ultimately caused some wolves to be born with an extremely rare black coat of hair. Researchers believe that somewhere along the line, wolves bred with domestic dogs, and that's where they get their dark coats. Scientists believe having a completely black coat of hair is actually beneficial to wolves living in a forest environment. Makes sense. It likely provides a better advantage for survival to forest wolves, which means that in the future we may see more black wolves being born, since wolves that are completely black have a better chance of surviving and breeding. But this probably won't happen for a few thousand years, so don't be surprised if you never spot a black wolf in your lifetime. Hey, real quick, if you're new here to Epic Wildlife, welcome to the channel. Give the video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Melanistic Whitetail Deer. Perhaps one of the most shocking animals that you wouldn't expect to be completely black is the whitetail deer. This is surprising because whitetail deer are obviously supposed to be pale, though they are usually a pale brown, not a pale white. There have been examples of hunters in Texas who have stumbled upon whitetail deer that are completely black. They look like something straight out of Harry Potter. The cause of this is melanism, a rare genetic mutation that basically causes the exact opposite of albinism. Instead of being born without any pigmentation, these deer have been born with an excess of melanin, producing unusually dark skin cells. The result is hair, eyes and skin all being extremely dark. But whereas albino deer don't live very long in the wild because they are easy to spot by predators, melanism helps them to blend in with their surroundings. For this reason, it's believed that melanistic white-tailed deer are more likely to survive in the wild. As for just how rare these animals are, the chance of spotting a completely black deer is somewhere around 1 in 6 million. In comparison, the chance of spotting an albino deer is roughly 1 in 100,000. Number 7. Black zebra. One of the oldest questions in human society is whether zebras are white with black stripes or black with white stripes. What do you think? It's about as philosophical of a question as the chicken or the egg, but it's a little more complicated than that. According to the San Diego Zoo, zebras actually have black skin underneath their hair. Technically, a zebra is completely black. It's just they have different coats of hair. Most zebras have white coats of hair, then brown or black stripes of hair. But then other zebras are born with special genetic variations that make all of their hair black and give them white stripes. The issue here is that the difference is extremely hard to notice unless you're a professional zebra watcher. But to answer the original question, zebras are in fact black. Most scientists agree that even the default colour of a zebra's hair is black. They just so happen to grow stripes of white hair. This means that zebras are black with white stripes. And now that you know, be sure to sneak it into your next conversation somewhere so people think you're smart. Number 6. Black seal. If you want to see the most adorable animal in the world, look no further than the black seal. There's nothing quite as cute as a chubby black seal with big black eyes looking like it needs a hug. However, it's extremely rare to see a completely black seal. To give you an example of just how rare this condition is, at the Donna Nook National Nature Reserve in the United Kingdom, around 1,700 pups are born each breeding season. Just recently, a single black seal was born. That's how rare this is. The birth of the adorable black seal was so rare that officials at the nature reserve couldn't explain how it happened. Both the pup's parents were grey, and yet the baby came out completely black. Some officials even claimed that in all their years of working with seals, they had never seen a black one before. It was likely caused by some kind of mutation, but it's such a rare event that very little studying has been done about it. For now, all we can do is appreciate the miracle of the cute black seal. Number 5. Melanistic squirrels. Black squirrels are far less demonic than albino squirrels. If you've ever seen a picture of an albino squirrel, it's probably made your hair stand up. But black squirrels are much less threatening to look at. That said, black squirrels are equally as rare. Most black squirrels are genetic mutations of either the eastern grey squirrel or the fox squirrel. It's a result of an abnormal pigment gene that causes the hair, eyes, and all other aspects to be completely black. These squirrels are typically found in North America, throughout the US and Canada. However, researchers determined that they can be spotted most frequently near the Great Lakes Basin. And while you might see a melanistic black squirrel in the wild, it's been estimated that out of all the slightly black squirrels out there, only 9% of them are 100% jet black. There are some pros and cons for the black squirrels. They thrive in the northeast because they can handle colder temperatures better than the heat due to their black fur that attracts the sun. They stay a little more toasty in comparison to their grey squirrel cousins. Only about 1 in 10,000 squirrels are completely black. Number 4. Mutant black penguin. Get ready for one of the rarest cases of an animal being completely black ever recorded in human history. A king penguin has been spotted and described by experts as a 1 in a zillion mutation. Those are some pretty outrageous odds. Instead of sporting the black and white tuxedo look, this king penguin looks majestic all in black. The black king penguin stands out significantly from the rest of the penguins in its colony. It was spotted only once by wildlife researchers visiting South Georgia, which is a small region about 860 miles from the Falklands in the Atlantic. A researcher from the University of Toronto described the photographs of the black penguin as astonishing. The researcher claims that the penguin must have lost control of its pigmentation due to some form of serious mutation. But what's the most remarkable thing about this story are the photographs captured of the black penguin taking a solitary walk or waddle across the beach, looking like the loneliest black sheep on Earth. Luckily, the penguin appeared to be showing the same types of behaviour as the other penguins, and hopefully it has not been ostracised since it was spotted. According to a report from the Daily Mail, about 1 in every 250,000 penguins shows some evidence of excess melanism, but this is the only penguin ever spotted that has been completely black. Number 3. The Ayam Cemani chicken. Have you ever heard of an animal having all black organs before? The Ayam Cemani chicken is probably the most popular and most expensive melanistic animal in the world. This chicken has a black heart, a black beak, black bones, and a completely black exterior from its toes to the tip of its tail. The only part of this chicken that isn't black is its blood and eggs. The Ayam Cemani has been described as the Lamborghini of poultry, the goth chicken, and even the Sith Lord bird. But why is it so popular? To find out the answer, we have to look to Indonesia, where the famous black chicken comes from. According to National Geographic, it is the most deeply pigmented creature found anywhere in nature. And because of this, it has become something of an ornamental animal in Indonesia and other Asian countries. People in the United States may not have heard of them, since fears over avian flu have banned almost all chicken imports from the country of Indonesia. But in the Southeast Asian country, a single Cemani chicken could go anywhere from a few $100s to at least $2,000. Another reason the black chicken is so popular in Indonesia is because the culture sometimes views them as magical creatures with healing powers. Almost no one eats the Cemani chicken, and many people are only interested in their allegedly magical blood, which is believed to bring wealth and good luck. They are the most unique chickens on the planet. Number 2. Black Flamingo. In the country of Cyprus, an ultra-rare black flamingo has been spotted, and experts believe it may be the only one on Earth. The black colouring is likely due to melanism, but quite frankly it's a little shocking. Out of all the animals you never expected to be completely black, the flamingo is number 1. Flamingos are supposed to be vibrantly bright pink birds, but this dark flamingo has flipped the world on its head. There was only one other instance of a black flamingo being sighted, and that happened in Israel in 2013. However, experts are saying that because flamingos are known to migrate, the black flamingo spotted in Cyprus just a few years later could be the same one. The chances of a flamingo being completely black is just 1 in several million. This could possibly be the only one of its kind. Number 1. Rare black fox. As usual, I have saved the most gorgeous animal for last. The black fox is extremely rare and beyond captivating. You're used to seeing red foxes, or maybe even Arctic ones, but a completely black one? The small creature with its dark black fur and bright orange eyes is like something that would only exist in a fairy tale. But black foxes are indeed real. Of course, your chances of seeing one are slim to none, but they do exist. However, the truth of the black fox may surprise you. It's actually known as a silver fox or a vixen, which itself is a melanistic form of an ordinary red fox that has been bred through domestication processes since the 1500s. Silver foxes have been bred together over the years to make sure that every litter has a black colour. Nonetheless, silver foxes are usually found to be silver and black. To spot a fully black silver fox is incredibly rare, even after 500 years of selective breeding. It's true that 1 in 5 foxes in the US are black, but a much smaller number is pure black, and that's really where the difference is. Number 10. Asian water buffalo. The Asian water buffalo is one of the biggest animals in the world, and they just so happen to have the biggest horns on average of any animal. This is according to the Guinness World Records, who claim the Asian water buffalo from India, Nepal, Thailand and Bhutan has horns on average stretching 3 feet and 3 inches. However, Guinness World Records claims that there was a bull shot in the year 1955 which had horns that measured 13 feet and 10 inches from one tip to the other. That's a monstrous set of horns. As for the Asian water buffalo itself, it spends most of its day wallowing in the mud, especially in the summer seasons. In fact, it uses its massive horns to shovel mud onto itself, kind of like how an elephant uses its trunk to give itself a bath. If there is no mud around, you won't find an Asian water buffalo. What's really interesting about these animals is that they used to migrate seasonally around 124 miles. However, none of the remaining populations undertakes such a dramatic migration anymore. Because of lack of habitat, most water buffalo hang around in the same areas all year long, basking in mud or hiding in tall grass. Number 9. Maror. The maror is one of the coolest goats you've never heard of. This unique species is the largest type of wild goat in the world, with massive spiral horns that can grow upwards of 5 feet long. If you've ever seen a goat with impressive horns, you've probably seen a maror. They typically live in herds of between 30 and 100 females, with lone males coming to hang out during the fall mating season with hopes of getting lucky. What's truly interesting about these goats is that their name is a Persian word that means snake killer. Many historians believe this title likely refers to either how their spiral horns kind of look like ugly snakes, or how the giant goat kills snakes really easily by crushing them with its giant hooves. But what do these goats use their huge horns for? Well, they basically use them like we use our arms. They use their horns for digging in the soil, for ripping bark off trees, for fighting with other goats, and of course for attracting lady goats. Lady maror goats typically mate with whichever goat has the biggest horns. Plus, their horns help work like an integrated radiator, since they are actually an extension of skin and there are blood vessels inside of the horns. The horns help to cool the goat when the weather is too hot. Number 8. Nubian Ibex. Out of all the animals on this list, the Nubian Ibex is undoubtedly my favourite. That's because of its incredible curved horns that look like they belong on the head of a demon, not on the head of an animal here on Earth. But besides just having the most amazing horns ever, which curve into a semicircle towards the beast's back, the Nubian Ibex also has some other very cool characteristics. Males grow long dark beards, which they use to mark their scent and to excite females during mating season. They literally use their little tufts of hair that grow on their chins to try and pick up chicks. The Nubian Ibex is also the only type of Ibex that lives in a desert setting. These animals live in the northeastern part of Africa and throughout Saudi Arabia. They spend almost all of their lives hanging out on the side of mountains, moving up and down sheer cliffs like four-legged cat burglars. This is actually a defense mechanism, since most large predators are unable to climb that type of rock face that the ibex can. And as for just how big their demon horns can grow, a typical male Nubian ibex can grow horns of up to 4 feet according to the San Diego Zoo. However, the ibex itself is fairly small. They are a light sandy colour, and believe it or not, their only 3 predators are bearded vultures, eagles and leopards. However, these predators usually only pick on the smallest of the bunch, seeing as how trying to attack an adult Nubian ibex with horns like the devil would almost certainly prove fatal to the attacker. Number 7. Black buck. The black buck comes from the family of antelopes, meaning it's related to things like gerenooks and gazelles. The most striking feature of the black buck is most certainly its spiraling horns, which stick straight up out of the adult male's skull. The longest horns ever seen on a black buck are estimated to have been just over 2 feet long. Like many other animals that have horns, only the males possess these immense weapons. The males are also highly territorial. They mark their territory by basically pooping on bushes to tell other black buck males to stay away. The territory can be as small as 20 acres, and within that small territory, a single black buck will reproduce with all the females to make as many young as possible. Another interesting fact is that the black buck is generally regarded to be as fast as any antelope. They also have incredible eyesight that helps them to avoid predators such as cheetahs. These animals live primarily in India, where their population has dropped from around 80,000 in 1947 to 25,000 today in specialised reserves. Some of their biggest threats: stray dogs, construction work and speeding cars. Number 6. Spiral horned antelope. Spiral horned antelope are pretty cool. They're not quite as impressive as some other horned animals, but they're definitely bigger than most goats and have some pretty unique horns. What's truly fascinating about this animal's horns is that they are shaped like corkscrews. Plus, these antelope are massive, weighing up to 2,000 pounds. Their horns can grow to be roughly 3 feet in length, but the even cooler part is how they grow in a spiral formation. According to the San Diego Zoo, the spiral shape is because of something known as growth pulse. The horn material will grow quicker and thinner during certain times of the year, and the horn will grow slower and thicker during these times. It's known as a growth pulse, and it causes the horn to twist over itself as it grows. Most spiral-horned antelope live for up to 20 years, though there are a few different species. There's the greater kudu and lesser kudu, and the lesser-known eland species. But each type of spiral-horned antelope still comes packing a big, twisting hood ornament right on its forehead. Besides just having cool horns, these antelope can survive for up to a month without a single drink of water, and a young, common eland antelope can jump over 10 feet in the air from a standing position. We really don't give creatures like this enough credit. Antelope are just incredible. Number 5. Jackson's chameleon. Let's take a break from bigger animals and check out the coolest reptile with the coolest horns. It's known as the Jackson's chameleon, and it's a small animal less than 12 inches in length with 3 horns on it like a triceratops. It lives in the forests and mountains of Africa. It's not even a little bit endangered, and it's extremely easy to differentiate from a male from a female. This is because only the males have horns. They have 3 horns sticking straight out of their face, looking kind of like wrinkly pink fingers. The Jackson's chameleon is sometimes known as the 3-horned chameleon or the mini triceratops. But what on earth does such a small lizard need such big horns for? And why does it have 3 of them? Like most horns in the animal kingdom, they're used for fighting and defending territory. Just because the chameleon's only 12 inches long doesn't mean it's not allowed to have a territory of its own to protect. 2 male chameleons will lock horns together in a brutal battle while they try to push the other chameleon from a tree branch. They may not have very large territories, but they will defend them to death. As you would expect from a chameleon, they spend their lives living in the branches. They are extremely colourful, they lick leaves to get their daily supply of water, and they give birth to live young. Most chameleons lay eggs, but not this one. The mother will carry the young inside her body, then abandon them immediately after birth. The young chameleons start hunting tiny insects basically the minute they are born into the world, with no help from the mother. Number 4. Texas Longhorn Bull. They say everything is bigger in Texas, and when it comes to horns, this statement is 100% true. Texas Longhorn Bull has recently stolen the title for having the longest horns on a living bull. According to the official report from Guinness World Records, the bull's name is Cowboy Tough Chex, and his long horns measure an incredible 8.6 feet in length. He has some very handsome horns. In fact, because of his massive horns, he is now estimated to be worth $500,000. But even though he's a Texas Longhorn, Cowboy Tough Chex was not born in the state. He was actually bred and raised in Oklahoma, then later purchased and transported to the Fayetteville in 2017. However, transporting the animal proved to be difficult because of how big his horns were. Transport required a massive cattle trailer and a whole lot of patience. In the bull world, Cowboy Tough Checks is basically Brad Pitt. The list of those seeking a little bit of DNA for their own breeding purposes is a mile long. He is making his new owners a whole lot of money. Ranchers all over the world are wanting a miniature Cowboy Tough Checks for themselves. In fact, this bull is so popular that the ranch where he lives has started giving tours for curious visitors to see the biggest horns in the world for themselves. If you're wondering how exactly the value of a Texas Longhorn bull is determined, it's all about horn length. The horn is measured from tip to tip, the total length of the horn, and the complete composite of the horn. These three variables add up to determine what any particular bull is worth. Number 3. Addax. An addax is a type of African antelope adapted for life in the brutal desert. They used to be found all throughout the Sahara Desert, but there are not very many of them left today because of poaching and the invention of the automobile. But still, some addax can be found in the most rural regions, and they have some stunning horns. Their horns can grow to be just shy of 4 feet long, and in this case, males and females each grow horns. What's even more shocking is that according to Britannica, females can grow horns just as long as the males. However, females have smaller bodies and weigh less, and their horns are typically thinner. Still, this is one of those rare instances in nature where the males and females of the species both grow giant horns out of their heads. Unlike other type of antelope, the addax is not very fast. This animal has short legs, which give it massive endurance but a very low speed. They live in the deepest parts of the desert, surviving on nothing but desert grass and small shrubs. Number 2. Scimitar Oryx. The scimitar horned oryx is yet another type of antelope. If you thought there was only one type of antelope, you were sorely mistaken. The oryx is dramatically different from the addax like we just talked about. It has horns shaped like 2 twin scimitars, and some people believe it was the oryx that originally started the legend of the unicorn. They are currently extinct in the wild, but they once roamed the deserts of Africa from Morocco to Egypt. The only scimitar-horned oryx around today are in captivity. The conservation scientists are hopeful they will be able to reintroduce these beautiful antelope back into the wild, with programs starting in Tunisia, Chad, and Niger. Number 1. Rhino horn. Just like how there are many different types of antelope, there are also many different types of rhinoceros, and they all have very big horns. Even the smallest of the rhino species, the Sumatran rhinoceros, has a small, stubby horn on its nose. The Sumatran rhinoceros is also one of the most elusive of the rhino species, with estimates saying there are only about 60 of them left living in Indonesia. But we're here to talk about horns, and the most impressive horned rhinoceros is definitely the white rhino, which comes complete with 2 giant horns on its snout. It has a front horn, which can grow to be almost 5 feet in length, and it has a secondary horn above that which is significantly smaller. As of 2013, it just so happens that the white rhinoceros, which is grey by the way and not white at all, is the most abundant rhino subspecies on our planet, with an estimated 20,400 southern white rhinos left. Unfortunately, the northern white rhinos are basically extinct, with only 2 captive females left on Earth, and a very low chance that one of them will give birth to a baby. But when it comes to talking about rhino horn, we can't omit the weird ways in which it has been used over the years. There are countless stories about poachers stealing rhino horn to be sold on the black market, not only for people to create expensive jewelry and ornaments, but also to be used in some seriously strange medicinal practices. Vietnam is often considered to be the biggest market for rhino horn, but China is up there as well. And supposedly, there are still people out there today who believe rhino horn can be used as an aphrodisiac to help a guy out in the bedroom. But this is of course ridiculous, and let me tell you why. Rhino horns are built primarily out of keratin, which is the same kind of protein found in your fingernails and in your hair. Using rhino horn as an aphrodisiac is like grinding up your fingernail shavings and turning them into a potion. Which horned animal is your favourite? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and be sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and come back soon for another amazing animal video.